Hi, I'm Brandy, the Executive Director of Culinary for the Chef Ann Foundation. At the Chef Ann Foundation, we're a national nonprofit whose mission is to help school districts that are in the process of transitioning from a processed heat and serve program to a scratch cooking program, because we believe that that's how kids have the best access to fresh fruits and vegetables and to a hot meal at school so that they can be more successful throughout their school day. And we do this work through a variety of free tools and resources, granting opportunities, and technical assistance.
And I'm Eli. I'm a senior operations specialist with the Chef Ann Foundation. We're going to be making two really great recipes, super simple, kid approved. We're going to be roasting some chicken drumsticks, and we're going to be making some beef burgers using raw beef patties.
Before we get started today, we want to talk briefly about the importance of standardized recipes in a school food program. Standardized recipes ensure consistency across your school food program. They also ensure that you're meeting all of the guidelines necessary for school food. Standardized recipes can be found on the Chef Ann Foundation's thelunchbox.org. We've got hundreds of recipes that meet or exceed the USDA guidelines.
The other thing you can find on thelunchbox.org is all sorts of SOPs or standard operating procedures for how to use raw proteins, such as the chicken and the beef that we're going to be doing today, to make sure that everyone does it the exact same way and that everyone's keeping food safety top of mind. As we go today, we're going to be pointing out tips and tricks that will help you remain food safe as you incorporate raw proteins in. And we encourage you to go to thelunchbox.org to really get into detail and train your whole staff in the proper way to do things.
Now, we know that incorporating raw proteins onto your menu can be a little bit intimidating. And that's why it's important that before you get started, you follow a couple procedures first.
We also know that cooking from raw proteins, kids just love it. You're going to get such a better product out of it. You can also incorporate local ingredients, maybe sometimes even go for the values aligned. And so we really want to show these two recipes that are easy transitions, not a ton of work involved, with our chicken drumsticks and our beef hamburgers.
Incorporating raw proteins can be a tastier option for your students and can provide better health benefits and can also be better for your local economy. So let's get started.
So for both of these recipes, we want to make sure that we're not getting in frozen product that we need to cook ASAP. If we get stuff in frozen, especially for raw protein, we want to be thawing it properly. So what that looks like for this comes in frozen. We're going to put it in the walk-in for a day or two, depending on how much we get. It might take 2 days to properly defrost so that way we're ready to go with a thawed and ready patty or chicken drumstick. When you're thawing, you do not want to thaw anything outside at room temperature. You also don't want to thaw anything under warm or hot water. If it's something that is bagged, you can run cold water over it if you're going to be using it ASAP. But with good planning, especially if you know you're going to be doing these recipes, we really recommend thawing as much as possible in the walk-in. So just transitioning from the freezer to the walk-in for when you're ready for it.
It's important that when you're going through this process, the whole process, that you're logging temperatures properly. That includes receiving temperature, storing temperature, thawing temperature, and cooking temperature, that you're using a thermometer that has been properly calibrated.
You want to make sure that food is staying outside of the temperature danger zone, just 41 degrees Fahrenheit to 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Think of that as kind of room temperature-ish. We don't want food to be in there at all. We want it to be cold held while it's cold and then hot held once we've cooked it. So this thermometer is going to be really helpful to make sure that all along the process, we're keeping it cold. And then once it's closer to time to eat and to cook, that we're keeping it hot.
Another key to food safety when incorporating raw proteins is understanding cross-contamination. Even though we're cooking 2 raw proteins today, most likely you won't be doing so at the same time on a regular school day. So you want to make sure that you're keeping each protein safe and separate from the other protein, cleaning as you go.
Also, cross-contamination is a big concern when you're using anything that is ready to eat at the same time as you're prepping raw proteins. So the main thing that we'd recommend, do all your raw protein prep in one place, all at the same time. Take everything to dish afterwards, wipe everything down afterwards, and then once you're done, you can move on to doing other things. That way, you're not going to be cross-contaminating anything from the raw to something that you're ready to eat.
And even in the cooler, things need to stay safe. Raw chicken goes on the bottom level so that nothing drips on and contaminates other proteins or other pieces of food.
We put our hamburgers one level above that, and you can find the proper ways of storing everything in your walk-in cooler to make sure that nothing is cross-contaminating, or if it is, you're still being as food safe as possible.
A standard operating procedure will help document all of this and help hold your staff accountable to all of these food safety standards.
We have those on the lunchbox.
We're excited to begin cooking, but there's a few important steps that have to happen first. We need to properly wash and sanitize our stainless steel tables for prep. Then we need to preheat the oven to the proper temperature, which is 375 degrees for our roast chicken. Next, we need to wash our hands, taking our time for at least 20 seconds to make sure we're washing our hands properly. We need to put gloves on and then gather our mise en place.
Washing your hands is such an important part of any cooking, and especially as you use raw proteins, it's even more important to get it right. So the main thing we want to work on, at least 20 seconds of scrubbing with soap, will be good. So turning my water on. So I want to make sure that I'm doing this, like I said, for at least 20 seconds, getting all under my fingernails, in between. And if you're really working in something that requires you to go all the way up your wrist, you could do that as well. And so once you've done it for 20 seconds, grab a paper towel or two. If you're doing this in a location that has a doorknob, say a bathroom or someplace else, you can then use these paper towels to open the door. Make sure that you don't recontaminate those hands that you just washed so well. But we are good to go, so we can go back to work now.
It's important when working with raw proteins that you make sure you start with a clean and sanitized surface. First, I'm going to wash my prep table, and Eli is going to follow behind me with sanitizer.
So washing makes sure that it gets rid of any debris, any big food particles, and then sanitizing will really work to kill any bacteria, lowering those levels to something within the safety window. And whenever you work with raw proteins, you really want to be careful. No cross-contamination, always wiping down as you go, always washing and sanitizing.
The first step in following our roast chicken recipe is to get our oven preheated. I'm going to flip our convection oven on, set my temperature to 375, turn my fan to high, and wait for my oven to preheat. Our surfaces are cleaned and sanitized, our oven is preheated, our hands are washed and gloves are on. Eli, why don't you go ahead and get started prepping the hamburgers, and I'll take care of the roast chicken.
Sounds good.
It's time to pan up the chicken. My recipe calls for 24 drumsticks on each sheet pan. Now that my raw chicken is panned up, the next step is to season my chicken. But first, I need to change my gloves. It's really important when working with raw poultry that you're changing your gloves after you touch it. So I've got some clean gloves in my seasoning today, which is really simple, just salt and pepper. You want to make sure that you're changing your gloves before you touch your seasoning. Otherwise, you'll contaminate your seasoning with raw chicken juices, which isn't safe. I'm going to simply season my chicken with salt and a little bit of pepper. I like to think of raw chicken drumsticks as a blank canvas. You can add flavors as you start to feel more comfortable, and salt and pepper is a great way to really bring out the natural flavors of the chicken. We preheated our oven earlier to 375. Let's check and make sure our oven's ready. The light being off tells me that my oven is preheated to 375. I'm going to place my chicken in the center of the oven The recipe tells me that this chicken will take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook to the proper temperature. I'm going to start by setting my timer for 15 minutes, where we'll stop and temp the chicken, knowing that it might take a few extra minutes. Let's check on Eli and see how he's doing with the hamburgers.
All right, we are going to make our burgers. So we can lay them out on a sheet pan. We're going to do 15 per sheet tray, so 3 by 5. And if you're used to doing your burgers pre-cooked, basically gonna be the same thing. We're just using raw patties for this. You're definitely gonna find that the flavor is gonna be even better. It's gonna be nice and juicy. And so once we've put all 15 of these on, we're gonna cook them, and then we're gonna season them afterwards with salt and a little bit of pepper. So we've got our 15 on a tray. And so if you were doing this for really huge volume like you would in school food, you just keep going, have a sheet tray, rolling sheet rack with you, and you could just load these up as you go, get them all ready to go in the ovens. All right. So I'm gonna put these in the oven. The oven is set to 325. And I'm just gonna set my timer for 10 minutes. So just turn it to the 10-minute mark, and I'm gonna check it right about that point. We want it to be 155 when we're entering the thermometer into the thickest part. And we want it to have some color on the outside. We want it to, crisp up a little bit and get super tasty. So we'll give it 10 minutes. We'll check in on it then and see where we're at.
I hear the timer, which tells me it's time to temp our chicken. We're gonna pull our chicken out to get a good temperature read from the center of the tray. You can see it's starting to develop a nice color. As you can see, it's only 142, which means it's not quite up to temp. We're gonna take the tray of chicken, put it back in the oven. We're gonna set our timer for another 5 minutes. I think it's only going to take 5 more minutes till our chicken gets up to temp. Our chicken is temping at 169, which is perfect. Anything above 165 is the temperature that you want to aim for when you're cooking any type of poultry. Our chicken is properly cooked to the right temperature. Next, I'm just going to flavor it with a little bit of sauce. I mentioned earlier how roast chicken can be a blank canvas. You can simply serve this as is with a little bit of salt and pepper, or you can add some sauce to it. Teriyaki sauce is nice, barbecue sauce is nice. I've got some barbecue sauce today, so I'm gonna add a little bit to my finished chicken product for a barbecue chicken drumstick. I've got barbecue sauce and a pastry brush. I'm simply gonna dab the pastry brush into the sauce and paint a little bit onto the chicken drumsticks. Kids love barbecue sauce, and it's a fun way to get some extra flavor into a raw protein dish. It's also important when you're cooking a raw protein like chicken that you're making sure when you're roasting it in the oven that you're doing so uncovered. You want to make sure that your chicken gets a little bit of this golden color to the finished product that you can see, and that the skin starts to crisp up as well. Okay, our chicken is sauced and ready to go, and we're gonna make it part of a complete school lunch. We've got our chicken for our protein, a whole grain roll, a salad, an apple, and 8 ounces of milk. It's a complete reimbursable meal. 2 drumsticks is a secondary portion. If I was serving this to an elementary child, I would simply just serve 1 drumstick. We've just shown you how easy it truly is to incorporate raw chicken drumsticks onto your lunch menu. As you can see, this is a beautiful, delicious looking lunch.
So we should be very close to our burgers being done, or at least at the 10-minute mark. We still have to temp them. I'm waiting for the timer to go off. It's dangerously close. Could be any second now. And once we do, we'll temp it, make sure it's at 155, and then we're gonna flip them, leave them in for about 1 minute just to let the other side cook a little bit longer, and then we'll be able to serve it. Wow, it's time, let's do it. So I'm gonna open it up, make sure I grab my oven mitts, because this is gonna be hot. And so what I want to do is temp the inside. The ones on the insides are always going to be a little bit colder. Let it come to temp. It sometimes takes a little bit. And so we're at 147. So we know we got to keep going. I'm going to put this back in the oven for just about 1 or 2 minutes, not a long time. Make sure we get to 155. And then we'll check on it once it's ready. All right, so we've put them back in the oven just for another minute or two. We want to make sure that they're at least 155, getting some nice color on them. And once they're done, once they're ready at 155, we're just gonna flip them, let them sit for 1 minute on the hot sheet pan, and then we'll be ready to plate them up. So I also don't need to wait for the time. Oh, there's our timer. You also don't need to wait for the timer. You can pull it a little early if you want, because we're not using time, we're using temperature. We got to make sure that these are all at the right temperature. So I'm going to take my tray out, close the oven doors back up, and I'm going to temp these again. I'm going to make sure that we've gotten to 155 in the center. There we go, perfect. So we're at 159. I'll test one more just to be safe. Yep, we are good to go. So now we're going to flip each one of these just to make sure that the other side can get some contact with the pan. Pan's still nice and hot. All right, so our burgers have been flipped, and the last thing to do is to add a little bit of salt on top, just to add the flavor. And so once each of these is seasoned, you'd go through and do that with all of your patties, and then you could put them right on your bun. So we're gonna just plate up our burger now. Put the bun on top or leave it on the side, and it's ready. If you kids wanna put ketchup, mustard, whatever they're feeling on it, it's ready to go. We've put some tomato and onion and lettuce on the bottom, but that too could be a decision. If you have a salad bar, you could line your salad bar special for Burger Day so that everyone can put on whatever they want. But there we have it, our complete reimbursable meal. We've got our whole grain bun, this beautiful patty cooked from raw, an apple, a salad, and our 8 ounces of milk. Enjoy. So before we wrap up, we just want to go over some of the important safety tips that you should make sure you do as you start to incorporate raw proteins into your district menu. 1, use a thermometer. Use it for every step of the process, from receiving to thawing to cooking and then hot holding. You really want to make sure you have a thermometer and you are checking the temperature and recording the temperature every single time. Another thing that we did, we made sure to wash our hands at least 20 seconds, scrubbing the hands, also washing and sanitizing to prevent cross-contamination on all of our counters. So beforehand, after we used raw protein, making sure that there is nothing that's going to touch what we just worked on.
Standard operating procedures will ensure that your staff is following all of these procedures and food safety standards. Standard operating procedures will also create a level of consistency and accountability across your district. You can find standard operating procedures for these raw proteins we showed today on the lunchbox.org.
You don't have to be afraid of raw proteins. Today we showed you 2 really simple recipes. We really didn't involve much else. We didn't bring out cutting boards. It wasn't a very big production. The goal is to show you that it could be really easy to make the switch from, maybe you're at chicken tenders right now, maybe you're moving to pre-cooked chicken, maybe at a certain point you can move to raw chicken like we just showed today. As long as you are following the SOPs that Brandy talked about and you do it just the way we showed you, It's going to be nice and easy, and kids are going to love it.
And it's a great way to level up your menu. When dealing with raw poultry, temperature really does matter. We set our oven at 375 degrees. That's the proper temperature for roasting. We cooked our chicken until we got an internal temperature of 165. You always want to cook your poultry to at least 165 degrees.
For the hamburgers, we wanted to get an internal temperature of 155. And so we lowered the temperature of the oven. We cooked it at 325 so that they wouldn't burn on the outside. And so you're always trying to find that balance when you're cooking between the time and the temperature. We know we have to hit these marks of 155 and 165 for food safety. And these are the temperatures for the oven to get you there.
And it's really important that these little tips are added to your recipes as well, so that your staff is consistently cooking these items. It's always important when you're cooking from scratch that you're cooking your items as close to service time as possible. You don't want to jump the gun and have things ready too early. What happens is they continue to cook and the quality starts to decrease as they sit in a hot box before service. So cooking as close to service as possible is key to success in scratch cooking.
As you saw, from the time that the chicken went in to when it came out, it was just about 20 minutes. And for the burgers, it was maybe 15. So really think about that. If everything is panned up, ready to go, ready to cook off, and then ready to go in the warmers or right onto the trays, you shouldn't need more than 30 minutes to get this from raw to ready. So a key part of mise en place is meaning everything in its right place, making sure that everything is pre-prepped ahead of time, is getting everything else that we put with these all assembled ahead of time so that you're ready to go as soon as the proteins come out of the oven. So for example, all of the tomatoes, the onions, the lettuce, all of that you could do potentially even the day before, washing, slicing, laying it out so that by the time the burgers come out, you are totally ready to go and you can serve as quickly as possible. One other thing we want to talk about is batch cooking. So batch cooking is a really great practice, especially as you're transitioning to cooking more from scratch and more raw proteins. And that just basically means cooking in batches to maintain quality. So if you have multiple lunch periods or lunch periods that last a long time, instead of putting all of your chicken in the oven all at the same time and then having the last kid in line eating an inferior product that's been sitting in the warmer for a long time, batch cooking would mean you cook the first batch in time for your first lunch service and your second for your second, and so on. So that way, the last kid in line gets the exact same quality as the first.
The scratch cooking continuum is the flow of a recipe as a district transitions from a processed heat and serve program to more of a scratch cooking program. At the Chef Ann Foundation, we help school districts make that transition and walk step by step through the continuum.
These are two really easy recipes where you can start that transition from an individually wrapped or heat and serve over to a speed scratch, and then ultimately to a fully scratch cook. So incorporating raw proteins like we did today would be a great way to transition to cooking from scratch, just like someone would have at home, like kids want.
The first step in the continuum, and what a lot of school districts are actually serving, is ready-to-eat individually wrapped items. The next step in the continuum might be something that would be heat and serve. This includes items like pre-cooked hamburger patties.
So next we get into scratch cooking. And so we've broken scratch cooking down into 3 components. We'll often hear people say speed scratch a lot. And that basically is when you take some scratch cooked and also some ready-made convenience products. So that way you don't have to do too much work. It's a step along the transition in the continuum. The next one we'd get to is fresh speed scratch. So you'd be using your ready-made products from whole or minimally processed ingredients with fresh ingredients to make a new complete dish. So a good example is, if you made a fresh salsa to go with a pre-made burrito, something like that. And then last, we have scratch made. And so that is what we're showing today, using whole raw or minimally processed ingredients, especially raw animal proteins. So today we did the hamburger and the chicken drumstick, both from raw. And we're using some culinary techniques. We're making sure that we're getting the right temperatures, we're getting them nice and brown. And so we're really trying to hone in on how to make great scratch-made food, bring districts along this continuum, because we know it's not all or nothing. You have to move slowly from one to the other to make change.
A special thanks today to Hank's Brokerage, Ben E. Keith in Dallas-Fort Worth, Action for Healthy Kids, and the Chef Ann Foundation. We hope you enjoyed this video.